All right, everybody, welcome back to the ATB NFL Live Show. This week, since there's really not much going on in the NFL, unfortunately, we haven't had any of the big quarterback news drop. Aaron Rodgers is still a Packer right now. Lamar is technically, I guess, a Raven, even though he hasn't signed his tag. So it's kind of a weird situation with him. But both of them are still in limbo. It's really the biggest dominoes yet to fall in the offseason. A couple signings here and there, but nothing too crazy. Free agency's definitely died down for the most part. So we're solely focused on the draft at this point. It's about a month out at this point. We're getting closer and closer to that. It's everybody's favorite time of year, I think, for the most part, if you're an NFL fan, other than, if your team makes it to the playoffs or Super Bowl. But at this point, that's what we're focused on. That's what we're going to talk mostly about. And we have a treat for you guys. We're doing a full first round mock draft. Each of us have done our own. And this is a what would you do scenario for the most part, right? Obviously, there's some things that are kind of so easy that it's going to be similar to what you might see if you look at a consensus mock draft or anything like that. But this is what we each individually would do. So there's going to be some differences, of course, hopefully. Can't imagine we're on the exact same wavelength, but that'll be pretty funny if one of us are. But in general, we're going to go through each of those. We're going to start with our first 10 picks. We're going to go around the board, kind of look at what we're doing with that, and then talk about it, kind of just move on. But how are you guys doing with the draft coming up here soon? You excited?
Oh, absolutely. Favorite time of year. We're on D Hop watch. Not willing to
Yeah,
speak
with
that
the
it
Bills. Yeah,
quite yet, but who knows? Maybe one of our mid round picks is about to belong
possibly.
to the Arizona Cardinals. But yeah, feeling very good. Love this time of year.
Absolutely. What do you think, Zach?
How do I feel about this draft? Sean Payton is in Denver and Tom Brady is retired, and the Dolphins don't have a first round pick. So,
I mean, you guys don't have a first round pick for both good and bad reasons, I guess, depending on how you
it
look
could,
at it.
I mean, it could have been a much worse situation as to why we don't have a
That's
first round
that
pick.
is true. So
But,
I'll give you guys that.
but still,
Yeah.
stupidity. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see what happens because there's some interesting. I mean, some fantastic prospects, but interesting decisions for these franchises to make.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're definitely going to just kick right into it. Again, not a whole lot of news to talk about otherwise. So I'm going to start actually, I think, with Tony here. Give me your top 10, a little bit about why you're doing each pick, and then me and Zach will see kind of what we think about it.
All right, I'm gonna give a disclaimer to the audience here because
Yep.
mine's probably gonna be the most crazy here, and then you guys are gonna reel it back into a more
We'll see.
reflective of reality
Yeah.
space. But looking at it from doing what I would do with each
Right, for
team
each team,
really
for each
opened
team,
up
yeah.
the opportunity for me to buck the usual the chalky
Right.
kind of. Everybody has the same top five, right? So like
Roughly,
I was
yeah.
able to look at it and say, I don't care what this team is going to do. This is what I would do, and things will look different. So without further ado, number one pick, Carolina Panthers, CJ Stroud, QB Ohio State. There's no question there. I've been very vocal about how I believe he is the best quarterback in the class. I think he's a perfect fit for what they want to do in Carolina. We have Josh McCown telling him, we'll find a court to play on in Charlotte when you're here. So it seems like that's going to happen, and I love it. Number two, and now this is where it all begins.
Okay.
Anthony Richardson, QB
Yep.
out of Florida.
That's
So
what I
my
thought.
reasoning there, because Bryce Young is the popular pick there, and I have nothing against that. My thought is, and I've said this before, Anthony Richardson is just tremendous upside. Like I'm thinking about what he can be in 2 to 3 years, and it's something special, something incredible. I also look at where I am as the Houston Texans and think I'm not here for year one. I'm not here to compete right now. I gave D'Amico Ryans a 6-year contract. I want to have a Super Bowl contender in 3 to 5 years, And so I went with the upside. I think it makes sense for where the team is in their life cycle. That leaves a quarterback, a very desirable quarterback on the board.
Right.
So Arizona's pick just got very tasty to a lot of teams. Arizona, thinking through it from their perspective, I don't want to move off the idea of drafting Will Anderson. Luckily, there is a team at 4 who wants a quarterback that can trade up. I can guarantee my guy, and I'm not going to get the biggest haul in the world, but I'm going to get something out of them. And because of all the other suitors, I think that they could even probably pick 35 from the Indianapolis Colts to move up one spot. So I have Indy moving up. I have them taking Bryce Young at 3 overall. I don't think much analysis is needed there. He's worth a better than the 3rd overall pick. So shut and close.
Have we ever seen a 3 straight QB draft?
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence,
2020.
Zach Wilson, Trey Lance.
Oh, shoot. That's right.
Um,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Well, so only
Um,
recently. Only recently.
very, very recently. So then number 4, I've already kind of tipped the hand there, but Arizona Cardinals pick Will Anderson. I think
Right.
you could not find a better combination of guaranteed great player at a premium position who checks every character box. And I think when you are defining the face of your new iteration, that's important, especially with Jonathan Gannon, their defensive guy. So pick number 5. Struggled with this a little bit, but ultimately I think Seattle's a team that can take on a player with character concerns and still thrive. So Jalen Carter, give me the freak there. I think Pete Carroll is going to find a way to make sure that no matter what is going on in Jalen Carter's life, he's going to be good at football.
Right.
6, Detroit Lions. Very interesting. They filled all of their holes in free agency. There's really a ton of different ways they could go. I even considered Will Levis just because, quarterback, when are you going to be up this high again? Yeah. However, I have them going with Tyree Wilson, edge out of Texas Tech. I love the frame, the potential there, and I don't know, it just something about that screams biting kneecaps to me. Pair him with Aiden Hutchinson, and you've got a formidable duo. Now for potentially the craziest pick in my mock.
Oh boy. Okay.
So the number 7 overall pick, currently held by the Las Vegas Raiders, is being traded to the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh.
All the way up from 23. They're gonna part with a 3rd round pick, a 1st round pick, maybe one extra little juicy spicer there. So why the Raiders would trade out? I think that they could take Levis, but I don't think they love him, and I think they just need to stockpile assets. Why the Vikings trade up? We've seen the ceiling of this was Kirk's best year. We've seen the ceiling. They're a wild card exit.
Oh, I was not expecting this turn. Oh my god.
Yeah. They are a wild card exit with Kirk Cousins. Go for something higher. Will Levis had his best year under Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator under Sean McVay. It was that style of offense. Kevin O'Connell runs the same shit. So there's proof of concept. We know what this player can be in this type of offense, and we know that his tools provide upside and a ceiling that Kirk Cousins does not have. So I say swing hard, go for it, set the new direction, and new face of the Minnesota Vikings, Will Levis.
Very fun.
Then the rest of it's relatively chalky. So Atlanta Falcons, another one they could go a lot of different directions. I have Christian Gonzalez, just overall, just like freak athlete at the position, just very, very good cornerback. You pair him and AJ Terrell to man up against anybody, they're going to be tough to beat. So that was just a fun little defensive fit. The Bears really wanted to go Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I'm going with a different Buckeye, Paris Johnson Jr. I think getting the best offensive lineman in the class just makes a ton of sense when Justin Fields is your quarterback and you want to find out who he is. And then finally, pick number 10, a personal favorite of mine, probably have him higher than most. I have the Philadelphia Eagles taking Brian Branch, safety, nickel cornerback out of Alabama. I think it's a seamless replacement for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's now with the Lions, and I just really love adding him to that secondary that already has Darius Slay and James Bradbury. It seems like a lot of fun. But that is my top 10. Would you like me to quickly run through all the names in order, or are we good?
Yeah, run through the names in order.
Yeah,
Okay.
run through it again.
So, 1, Panthers, CJ Stroud. 2, Texans, Anthony Richardson. 3, Colts trading up for Bryce Young. 4, Cardinals trading down, getting Will Anderson. 5, Seattle, Jalen Carter. 6, Detroit, Tyree Wilson. 7, Vikings trading all the way up for Will Levis. 8, Falcons, Christian Gonzalez. 9, Bears, Paris Johnson. And 10, Eagles, Brian Branch.
Wow.
Okay.
So, go ahead,
So
Zach. If you have a
outside
question.
of one player, my top 10 has all the same players.
Ooh, okay.
Outside of one player.
That's fun. So you guys are pretty much on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
I will let you guys know that I do have a few different players in mind compared to yours. So that'll
Okay.
at least be a little different. But
Okay.
the thing I wanted to ask you, Tony, so with the Vikings Levis pick, that's obviously the one that's the most off the wall, right? I definitely get the thought process. My question, do you think obviously that, and I think this is kind of where you're going with Kirk, you let him play out this year. Obviously, you let Levis sit, I assume. Unless obviously someone comes calling and offers you something stupid for Kirk Cousins, right? Then maybe
That's
you just
exactly
transition. But outside of that, he sits for a year. You let him learn the offense under Kirk, and then see what kind of happens from there. I guess, right?
Yeah, I think it
Show
leaves you in
makes
a
sense.
position where you
Yeah.
can do a lot of different things. Like you said, if you get a really good offer for Kirk Cousins, then go ahead, sell him. Why not?
Right.
Otherwise, you let him play out the contract. I think it's just this year. You move off of him after this year, no matter what.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even think you need to get like if you're a couple games below 500, 8 games into the season,
Oh
and
yeah,
you're
you throw him
like
in there.
you're
Yeah,
like
you
somebody
throw
else
him
is
in.
running away with this division, like you just put Levis out there, get him reps, and just look to the future. So yeah, it puts them in a position to be really flexible and with his development curve.
Yeah, I definitely I get that for sure. Yeah, I think the Vikings it's definitely a lot to give up, but again, they have to do something at quarterback, and I don't know if you're necessarily going to be bad enough to ever get one naturally until Cousins is gone. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's after next year, but again, like the quarterback class next year is supposed to be very good, but we don't know how deep it's going to really be. So I get it for sure. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and this is something that you'll see when I get to mine. Paris Johnson Jr. being your top offensive tackle. That's pretty chalky at this point in terms of offensive tackle, but you also have him as your best offensive lineman, period, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
outright.
gotcha.
And so I will say there's some positional value that goes into
Right,
that,
the
just
tackle.
like that
Right,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
buck, So,
Gotcha, yeah.
but I think they're pretty tightly grouped. There's like a top tier
Yeah,
with
the
like
top
four
of the
guys that are all
tackles,
pretty
yeah.
similar.
Right, yeah.
I don't think I drafted a single guard in the first round.
Fair enough.
I drafted guys that might play guard year one,
Right.
kind of, but
But
yeah,
that's also because like I was kind of going based on like positional rankings and like overall like
Right.
mock draft rankings, and it didn't seem like guards were that high.
Not particularly this year,
Yeah.
so but we'll definitely see what you have there. So yeah, unless you had any other questions for him, Zach, or comments, you can jump in.
No, the only thing I thought you were gonna say that the Vikings were gonna take Jackson, because and then pair Jackson and trade up to pair Jackson and
Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson, yeah. But yeah.
It would be very
crazy.
fun. I don't believe in trading up that high for a non
Oh, yeah,
QB.
yeah.
And I would
That's a
rather
little
have
much,
them stay
yeah.
put and like maybe move up slightly for Jordan Addison
Well,
later.
it's-
But
it's
I do love the
interesting.
idea of adding a receiver to that room because they
Yeah,
desperately
for sure.
need one.
They will
It's
need to do
interesting
that,
because
yeah.
I definitely addressed receiver for them. Yes, I did in the first round,
Cool.
but not with Jackson. But no, that was interesting. I was just like,
Yeah.
that could be a stab.
All right, Zach, you're up.
All right. So my first three are extremely chalky.
Okay, makes sense.
Number 1 and 2, we've talked about very heavily on this show. I have the Carolina Panthers selecting CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans selecting Bryce Young.
Right.
I just think that that's the best way for both teams right now. And not necessarily because I'm down on Anthony Richardson's ceiling. It's more I'm more concerned on the floor for the
Right.
Texans.
I think that's where most people are at.
Yeah. So then I have Arizona selecting Will Anderson. That just goes in with the thing. And now we get to the fun one. There's no trade. We're all picks here. And I'd like to think I know I wouldn't be able to make this decision if I was with the Colts. But I know that there's going to be a man that comes in and be like, no, this is my team. And you can't stop Jim Irsay. And I think that they're going to select Will Levis.
There's been a lot of talk about that. Yeah.
Yes. And take him as the third quarterback and kind of be that like what we've seen in that like third or fourth selection of quarterback where like one team messes it up and they're like, yeah, wait, what did you guys do? And that kind of opens up the rest of my board really well and open it up really well late because that pick kind of messed everything up. So I had Seattle taking Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech.
Okay.
Still on the defensive line, still addressing that. But then you get to the Lions, who have an incredible opportunity to select for the future, and they don't have to start him immediately. They can let him sit.
You're right.
The Detroit Lions select Anthony Richardson and take him off the board and get ready for the future because that like it was just way too perfect for that to be set up. I just like with the way that Detroit has built. I know at the beginning we were all making fun of Dan Campbell, but that's
biting kneecaps. Yeah.
Not even just the way that he like was coaching and stuff like that, but like it goes deeper into how he's built his coaching staff and the way that he has handled his assistants. Man, Detroit is a a fine-tuned machine right now, and I can't wait to see what happens when they like get over the hump. And it looked like they started to get over the hump at the end of last season, so I think that'd just be perfect. Number 7 for the Raiders, I had them taking Paris Johnson Jr. just to give Garoppolo some protection, because they could use it. They could definitely use some help. Atlanta, I have taking Jalen Carter because they need help on the defense.
I think that's kind of where the farthest he'll fall, probably. Yeah.
He stays on, but like there was just way too much that had like opened up and like had played very perfectly that he was just in a little bit of a free fall. So then Chicago, I have them taking Jackson Smith in Jigba. And
yes, thank you. I wanted somebody to do it.
Oh yeah, no. I mean that you pair him with DJ Moore and you give Justin Fields immediately him, DJ Moore, and Darnell Mooney. Like that's not bad. And then they still have Khalil Herbert. I think they signed a running back too, didn't they?
Deontay Foreman.
Yeah. So yeah, they're set. They've completely flipped. Now they do need to address coverage, but that's a whole different story. Defensive or offensive line coverage. And then I also have Christian Gonzalez going in the first round to the Philadelphia Eagles at 10. So yeah, that's my top. The only difference being Jackson.
I definitely don't dislike it at all. Yeah, I think that Carter falling to 8 is definitely reasonable. I think I'd understand waiting on him that long, just because again, there's players that even though maybe he's slightly ahead of some of those players on a lot of boards, just the questions with him is enough to knock him down a couple pegs. So I totally get that. I think Levis being the pick instead of Richardson does definitely, even though I know this is what we would do, it makes sense though too with how the Colts are in general. I can see them looking at a guy who they think is at least going to be good, probably, as opposed to someone who's not going to be able to play, possibly, depending on who you ask.
No, so exactly. And I think that was my whole thought process there is Jim Irsay is going to be like, no,
I want the kid.
What happens if he's not ready day one? No, we need somebody on there day one.
You got Gardner Minshew, man. But I don't know. It's tough for the Colts, but I get where you're coming with that. But yeah, for the most part, don't really have a lot of like major questions. Everything makes sense. I think the Raiders going tackle very interesting because obviously Paris Johnson Jr. plays right tackle. You have Colton Miller to play left. Like that'll work out. I think for sure that can definitely be something that'll work for them. And Garoppolo is probably going to get hurt at some point anyway, but it's make it less likely by him not getting destroyed all year. That'd be good. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. Anything you want to add to that, Tony?
I just wanted to go back to the Lions picking Anthony Richardson. Yeah, I love it. If he's on the board there, honestly, I could even see them trading up for him. It makes too much sense.
It does.
Because they don't need him to be there day one, but they need something at the future. And man, is he a future to have. So I love that fit.
Honestly, I've had this opinion for a while. While there are some quarterbacks that can come in and start day one, I don't think that is advantageous to any rookie quarterbacks like long-term like growth whatsoever. I think it's only become like a more recent thing that we've seen. And you have so many more examples of seeing quarterbacks who get to sit for a year and then play the next year and be so much better. So I get concerned if a team drafts Anthony Richardson and is expecting him to start day one, because I don't want that timer to start from there, because that's not fair for him, because we've already established that he needs to have some time to sit with some people.
Him especially in this class is the one that's like still in the top 5 of picks, but is not probably somebody you want to see play very much unless it's like creative stuff here.
Because thank God Malik Willis didn't get selected in the first round last year, because he would have been destroyed after what we saw. And he was in there because of injury.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely makes sense for sure. But so I'm gonna jump into mine. It's definitely gonna be a little bit different than you guys. So with the first pick, I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Bryce Young out of Alabama. That's my top quarterback, so I take him at 1. Totally get the CJ Stroud pick. I think it's probably what is going to happen, and I will not fault them at all for it. But again, I'm going to go with my personal board here. I'm going to take Young number 1. Stroud then does go number 2 to Houston. I think he is the second best quarterback in this class, so obviously got to go him at number 2. This is where the third quarterback comes in, and I actually have the Lions moving up from 6 to 3 to bypass the Colts, offering up more than the Colts are willing to kind of match based on value and other things. They come up and they take Anthony Richardson out of Florida. That's where I think that would come in. Like you want to jump those, the Colts especially, make sure you get your guy. That's who I think their guy would be. They've already had him on a visit. From what I've heard, I saw the Kentley Platt, who does RAS. He was doing some Lions stuff, and he was saying that he's already visited with them. So I think that's definitely possible.
Oh yeah, well
And
he's a big Lions fan too.
Yeah, he
so.
is. Yeah, so, but I would definitely do the same thing. That's again. So I would want to do that. You have a chance to develop a guy behind Jared Goff who played really well last year. I don't think he's obviously the future or anything, but he played well enough where you're not chomping at the bit to get rid of him necessarily. You'll be able to transition to Richardson pretty smoothly once that time comes. Pick number 4. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of him overall, I do have Will Levis going to the Colts. They have to take a quarterback. They have to take a shot at it. They've spent too much time trading for guys and signing. At this point, take somebody who you try to develop. Maybe if you don't want to start him right away, Minshew is there. He's shown he can start games and win them to a certain degree. I don't think he's going to be anybody that's going to keep Levis off the field. But if he's not ready, you have somebody who can at least capably play for you. Pick number 5, Will Anderson Jr. for the Seahawks. I think he's the top edge, obviously, and they really need just defensive help. He's the pick for me. Cardinals at 6, be able to still get one of the best players in the class. I do have them taking Jalen Carter. That's where I have him going. I think that, again, I kind of hesitate with him and Anderson Jr. about who's the best defensive player, but the fact that Carter obviously has some of the off-field stuff that we're still trying to figure out bumps him down a little bit for me. Number 7, this is where things definitely get a little bit different from you guys. I have Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois going to the Raiders at pick 7. This guy, my favorite thing about him, one, is that the Raiders just need defensive help, so it makes a lot of sense. But this guy plays like he hates the mere concept of offensive football. That like you get that from him like every single snap. Like he can play safety, he can play in the slot, he can play outside. He has all the versatility. Wherever you need him to help you right away, you go ahead and stick him in there, and he's going to be one of your better defensive players, especially on a team that has little defensive talent the Raiders have. Then for pick 8, I do have Christian Gonzalez going right after him to the Falcons. I think you pair him with A.J. Terrell. Good luck trying to throw in that team, especially now that they've added Jesse Bates from the Bengals as well. That back end will be scary for multiple years that way. Pick number 9, I go Peter Skoronski. He's my top offensive lineman. Now, I understand he may not play tackle. I think he can hold up a tackle if he needs to. I think it's worth trying him at right tackle specifically for the Bears right away. But you're probably going to get a very high-level, Pro Bowl, even possibly all-pro level guard. He's the best pass protector overall in this class, I think, and that's huge for Fields. And then pick 10, I do have a trade. This is my second trade of the 2 that I do. The Patriots see offensive line start to go. There's teams ahead of them that really want to take offensive line. They jump ahead of them with the Eagles. Eagles drop down 4 spots. Still going to have a lot of players to choose from. Again, the Patriots come up. They take Paris Johnson Jr. out of the Ohio State University.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting one to me, and something that I feel bad that I don't have him as high as I actually value him, is the Devin Witherspoon.
Yeah. He's my top
7.
DB overall,
Because I love the player. I think you described him perfectly. He's got that Jair Alexander thing where he's like tiny, but he'll lock anybody down, and he will talk shit, and he hates you.
I've heard a lot of Sauce comparisons.
In terms of their
the mentality.
The mentality, for sure.
The mentality.
He's got that dog in him. So I love the fit. He slid in mine further than I ever should have because I do value him that high. I just wanted to call that out. I love that one.
Right.
Well, we will address him very soon.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys will have him come off the board pretty soon. Yeah, one notable exclusion for mine, and you'll see him pretty soon, and it's just mostly a preference thing. Tyree Wilson does fall out of my top 10. I know he's probably going to go top 6 at least. I think he does have a lot of rawness to him. He's only had 1 year of real production. I want to see what that ends up looking like in the NFL, but the frame, everything else makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams, but a little bit lower for me than maybe some other people have him. But unless you have any other comments for mine, we can move on to Tony again. Go back up to 11 through 20 now.
All right, let's hit it.
Right.
So the rest of this is less crazy, right? The quarterbacks are off the board, and
that's where the crazy.
insanity.
I have some fun things.
I'm sure Zach does. Yeah, but go ahead.
I've got some fun stuff. Nothing I would call as crazy as my Will Levis Minnesota Vikings trade. To jump right in, so 11 Tennessee Titans. They had a mass exodus from their offensive line. They need to replenish there. Have Broderick Jones, tackle from Georgia, going at 11. I know it's probably a bit higher than he's been going recently, but I just think he's a mammoth of a person. He's powerful.
So much
He's got all the
upside.
tools to put together. And so I think that fits the Titans' personality, especially. So I really like the fit there. Houston Texans at 12. This was a tough one. I thought about going wide receiver, getting AR some help, but instead I turned my focus to the other side of the ball. You have DeMeco Ryans as your head coach. We've seen what he's been able to do on the defensive line when he has really good athletes and a wealth of players there. So I have him taking an interesting one, higher than I really value him, but the fit's too hard to pass up. Lucas Van Ness, pass rusher, edge player, really just a D lineman from Iowa. I just want to see who he becomes with DeMeco Ryans as his coach. He played inside, he's played outside. He's an incredible athlete, raw tools. I just want to see it. New York Jets at 13. I don't love this fit, but they need offensive line help. I have them going Peter Skronsky from Northwestern. I have him listed as a tackle here because that's really where they need the help in addition to center, but I wasn't going to take a center here.
He can play anywhere, though, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But
so
he will
do have a guard drafted.
All right. So I'm worried that he will have to kick inside the guard, and then you just have Elijah Vera Tucker and Peter Skronsky as two previous tackles that are now guards that are just versatile, and you still have tackle problems. But ultimately, just get 5 really good offensive linemen on the field, and Skronsky does that. 14, New England Patriots. This is something they would never do, but I would do if I was in charge of that room.
Right.
Adding Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver, Ohio State. Mac Jones needs help. That offense needs help. It's pretty bereft of talent. And I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is the best receiver in the class. He's awesome. He fits the Patriot mentality, I think, too, just as he's the slot, he's the alpha slot. So I would hate it as a Bills fan. I would love it to see filling a very big need. Green Bay Packers at 15. I didn't know what to do with this, so I went with the chalk. I went with Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. I think it's a need for them. They need pass catchers. They have nothing at tight end right now. Jordan Love is going to need players to throw to. Yes, I say Jordan Love. I don't think the Jets will have to trade their first-round pick to get Aaron Rodgers. So I just think, building around Jordan Love like they never really did with Rodgers.
Which, again, very funny. Yeah.
At least in the term of first-round picks.
You got
Washington Commanders at 16.
He had Mercedes Lewis.
He did have Mercedes Lewis. You cannot take that away.
No.
So 16 Washington Commanders. This is where Devin Witherspoon's slide ultimately ends.
Good value.
They need cornerback. It's too low for a player of Witherspoon's caliber, but it just kind of fell this way. So bring in a premier player, and I love the fit. Pittsburgh Steelers at 17. I am very interested to see your facial reactions to this one, Shayne, because I know the positions I should have gone to, and there was just something I couldn't ignore.
I think I know where you're going to, yeah.
I want to reunite Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, and so I did it. And I know it's not their biggest need, but ultimately, you just drafted a quarterback in the first round last year. You need to make it a pass-first offense. You need to make Kenny Pickett worth that pick. And I don't think adding his, the best receiver he's ever played with is a bad move. I did bypass some cornerbacks I liked. I bypassed a tackle I liked, which probably make more sense. But it's just really fun, and I want to see it. And I'm the GM, so I get to do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Go ahead.
Detroit Lions at 18. Another player that should be picked higher. Joey Porter Jr., cornerback out of Penn State. Another guy who I think fits the mentality of the Lions. And I know they just really invested in the secondary, but ultimately you can never have too much. Jeff Okudah is going to be up for a contract at some point. I don't know if you really want to bring him back, even though he's taken some strides recently. Emmanuel Mosley, I'm pretty sure that's only a one-year deal, and he's had injury history. So why not continue investing in a really important position and add Joey Porter Jr.? 19, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another one where I was like, what the hell do I do with this? So I went with Nolan Smith, edge rusher out of Georgia. I think he's a very exciting athlete. He has a super high floor as a run-stopping defender on the edge, and you hope that there's untapped potential as a pass rusher just because of his profile. And that just feels like a pick they'd make, just investing in the trenches and premium positions. And then 20, Seattle Seahawks, adding a freak athlete in Deonte Banks, the most athletic corner in the draft. I think Tariq Woolen was an absolute hit last year in the 5th round, being another freak athlete at the position. why not grab another and protect yourself against any downslide he might have. So I just think that's a fun little fit. So running through really quick, 11 Titans, Broderick Jones, 12 Texans, Lucas Van Ness, 13 Jets, Peter Skronsky, 14 Patriots, Jackson Smith and Jigba, 15 Packers, Michael Mayer, 16 Commanders, Devin Witherspoon, 17 Steelers, Jordan Addison, 18 Lions, Joey Porter Jr., 19 Bucks, Nolan Smith, 20 Seahawks, Deontay Banks.
Okay. I think the first thing I want to ask about, as far as the Jackson Smith and Jigba pick, I like the player. Do you think in that scenario, who of those two, because one of them will have to, who of him and Juju Smith-Schuster will be playing on the outside primarily?
Truthfully, I don't care about Juju Smith-Schuster. I did not give him a big enough contract
you can't
to move.
$11 million a year. He's going to be starting and playing most of the snaps. So that was my question. I think actually Jackson Smith and Jigba can play outside. I think.
I think it's a
I'm not
feel it out kind of thing. Like you're gonna have them. I don't know, interchanging.
They'll both
you're
play
gonna
in
be
the slot, but I think Jackson would actually be the one that would probably play more outside at this point.
You put Jackson outside with Devontae Parker, and you're fine.
Yeah, I don't think Juju Smith-Schuster on a 3-year, $33 million contract is enough to move me off of taking a much better player.
Right. I was more so just curious how you felt you would tackle that of like who you play where and maximize both those guys, because that is an interesting dynamic between those two, because ideally they're both obviously best in the slot probably, but I think at this point Smith and Jigba would be a better player outside than Juju would be, so I think that's probably how you balance it a little bit. But I like the pick though, bro. They need, like you said, they need receiver help if they want to have any chance of Mac Jones working out at this point, or just the offense working out. Really, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. Michael Mayer at 15, I definitely like it from the sense that the Packers definitely need that position, and I think this tight end class is really good, and Mayer's in most people's eyes the best tight end, so I get that. I get the Addison pick, okay? So I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't understand it. Obviously, you said exactly why everyone who wants it to happen wants it to happen. I am curious, and from what I can see here, then obviously, so he's your second receiver, right, in this class?
Yeah.
So he is the second receiver off the board.
Right.
I look at this draft class, especially at wide receiver, in like just buckets.
Right.
And
for
so
sure.
It's very much a pick your flavor thing. Do I think straight up Addison is my wide receiver too? I don't know. I truly don't know, because there's like 3 guys I have tied for that title.
That's fair.
It was purely just a man, they looked really good together in college.
Right. Yeah.
I want to see it again.
Yeah, that's fair. Anything you wanted to talk about, Zach?
No, I mean, it's a little interesting because we have a couple of the same picks in our 11 to 20. And now it's going to get to the point where it's like, there can be some differences. So that's where it gets fun.
Sure. Especially for you too. Yeah. But if you're ready to go then, Zach, you can jump in with yours.
So we start with 11. I also had the Titans taking Broderick Jones.
Okay. Nice.
So right off the bat, that's why I was like, okay, we're on the same wavelength. So then with the Texans, they addressed Bryce Young, and I thought the same thing. I was like, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I gave D'Amico Ryans Miles Murphy from Clemson.
Ooh, fun. Okay. All right.
So that great off the edge. And then 13 as well, Peter Skronsky to the Jets. So yeah, those like the first 3, I was like, because I mean Murphy wasn't, but I was just like, we were on exactly thinking the same thing. So then 14 is where we get fun, and we talked about Devin Witherspoon earlier.
Okay.
And the Patriots still have their pick.
And
he's
a Patriot player.
Yes, Patriot player. You put him with Bill Belichick, that would be absolutely phenomenal. They who retired this offseason for them? Somebody retired. McCourty. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah,
and Hightower, but McCourty.
Yeah, they have a lot to repair, and it doesn't look like Belichick's going anywhere anytime soon.
Doesn't seem like it.
You might as well give it the old college try and not mess up your first round pick like you.
Fair enough.
So this is where I think I strayed farther from anything that would actually ever happen
with the Packers pick here.
With the Packers pick,
okay,
at 15, because I took Jordan Addison.
Ooh,
give Jordan
I love that.
Another Jordan.
Okay.
Now,
okay,
this could also be a a final cry to be like, hey, Aaron,
Well,
look.
the thing is, I think they don't want him. That's the thing.
Yeah, they don't want him, but if they
But if
can't,
you're doing it, maybe you dude.
but
Maybe
if
you
they
do.
can't get it
So.
off the books,
True.
so
Yeah.
like if like they just can't get a deal done, you can't just sit there with him on your roster for
It's
nothing.
tough. Yeah, it's tough.
So
Yeah.
like I guess do something to be like, hey, maybe
It helps no matter what. I think.
Yeah, and it helps no matter what, because as Tony pointed out, they have nothing. Like there's nothing on that offense besides Aaron Jones.
Christian
to
Watson
really like
maybe
depend
will
on.
Yeah, Christian Watson,
Yeah.
Romeo Dobbs. You hope they
Yeah,
continue
and-
a path, but
we don't know what the drop off is going to be from going from Aaron Rodgers to
Sure.
Jordan Love,
Sure.
or if there will be a
know.
drop off.
Yeah.
So I think that was just one thing I was just like, they need offensive help. Will it happen? I do not think so. But if
Historically,
I
no,
was
but it's,
doing
yeah,
it,
it's your option though. Yeah, you're
yes.
doing it.
So then the Commanders are on the board at 16. I took Joey Porter Jr. for the Commanders, give them some defensive help, really start to like that's another team that looks like it's close. Their ownership situation is what it is. But I think they're a few steps away if they can obviously address the quarterback situation. And then with the rest of it, it's just their biggest thing is their defense just doesn't play up to their standards. They have a very
they have a lot of
talented
talent,
defense,
just not.
but they don't play up to their potential.
Yeah.
So then 17 for the Steelers,
Okay.
I took Lucas Van Ness.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that a couple times. So
That's
yeah.
fun.
Get some more depth, get some more pass rush, so that TJ Watt isn't doing it alone. Because that was the one thing that I pointed out in one of my off season. I think it was either Robert Quinn or I think it was Robert Quinn. It was just like, you can't be dependent on one. No, your defense can't be dependent on one person, and then on top of that, a defensive lineman. If that defensive lineman goes out,
I mean,
And
Highsmith
Alex
had a great season. I
he's
think
coming
he's
up contract
this year.
negotiations.
Yeah,
okay,
this year
yeah. So
coming
yeah,
up,
you want to invest there.
Yeah. So like, you just got to get something there. Then the Lions at 18, I took Brian Branch from Alabama. Still some secondary help. Now 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Uh-oh.
I knew exactly what I was doing with this pick because this man was still on the board. He had been on the board for a while because the value of this position is so messed up. We don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
We have no idea what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be next season.
Okay.
You need something to sell some tickets.
Oh, this is where he goes. Okay, I know where you're going.
Bijan Robinson.
All right.
Bring Bijan down. At least you give Kyle Trask something in the backfield, or Baker Mayfield, something in the backfield. Do you need to do some offensive line work? 100%. Because that was the biggest issue last year. You do probably have some people returning from injury now, so there is some hope. But Leonard Fournette's gone. Ronald Jones isn't anything. They also have.
I think he's in Kansas City too.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
Ronald
he's
Jones
just out.
is now. He's not even in Kansas City. He signed with I think the Cowboys recently.
Oh shoot! Yeah. So exactly.
Yeah, it's like Keyshawn Vaughn and
Keyshawn Vaughn. Yeah. So there's nothing.
Rashad
White. Yeah.
Lead back
and Rashad White's the lead back. Bring in a firm bell cow that, like we were talking about beforehand, he can go 3 downs. You don't have to worry about like the team being awful. You still have something for the fans to be like, oh, hey, we have a shiny new rookie. This is awesome. Who cares that everybody just left? But I think this is like kind of a like just a face saving move to make sure that like, hey, we're not like a laughing stock. And then 20 for the Seahawks. I have them taking Brian Brees. So because I found it interesting. You guys had Jalen Carter going earlier, or I think Shayne did. I just kind of flipped it, and where I did their edge help first, and then did their interior later. So that's my 11 through 20.
Bijan pick makes a lot of sense. I will say.
So did you want me to run through it one more time?
Yeah, sure, if you could.
So 11 Broderick Jones to Tennessee. 12 Miles Murphy to the Texans, 13 Peter Skoronski to the New York Jets, 14 Devin Witherspoon to the Patriots, 15 Jordan Addison to the Green Bay Packers, 16 Joey Porter Jr. to the Commanders, 17 Lucas Van Ness to the Steelers, 18 Brian Branch to the Lions, 19, Bijan Robinson to the Buccaneers, and 20, Brian Brees to the Seattle Seahawks.
I think the one that jumps out to me immediately is Miles Murphy at 12. And I think the reason it does is because the opinion on him is very mixed this year.
Mhm.
Because if you look at his 2022 tape, he's probably a second round pick. Let's just because I watched a lot of him recently because Mike Tomlin was at Clemson. I'm watching a lot of the Clemson guys. Definitely was more of a second round player on film in 2022. 2021 though, that's top 10 pick tape. So I think it's the combination of the two. Is do you trust that it was just him being hampered by an injury like he talked about? Do you think he kind of just flashed a lot more in 2021 and maybe that's not exactly who he's going to be? But I do get it because if he plays like he did in 2021, I think that pick at 12 is going to be even maybe a value, not just a good pick at a good need. So that one I think is very interesting because I do have him going in this mock, but it's not going to be for a while. So
Yeah,
and that's
All right, I'm on the
because of
same
that.
page with you, Shane. Yeah,
partly
he's going to be
for a
towards the
while.
bottom of mine, but I definitely understand like if anybody
he
can
could-
get
he
him
could end
back
up
to
being
what he
there.
was,
Yeah. It would be
it's D'Amico Ryans.
Probably
Like
D'Amico Ryans, yeah.
I took a similar approach where like I just threw an edge player that I thought had fun upside at
Right.
D'Amico Ryans and said do something with it.
Exactly.
And I think
Yeah,
that's
I
what
think
Miles
it's good.
Murphy does.
Absolutely.
I'm interested. So 18 Detroit Lions went with Brian Branch. So I took him to the Eagles as the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson replacement. He's now in the same secondary. Is that more of like it was a 1-year deal? You need somebody long term and they can play fun football together for a year? Like, how do you see that shaking out?
Yeah, I think it was more like a long-term move of like just like you have a lot of they're trying to build something
His
long-term.
versatility too is going to
Yeah.
make him like he can really play any like obviously I think his worst spot's outside corner, but he's done it. I think he could do it in spurts, so you can play him there. Slot is probably his best position. You throw him in the slot occasionally. Sutton, hoping will be the main slot corner for them because I think that's his best spot, and I want to see him play well since he left Pittsburgh. But yeah, he can play a lot of places, so I get the pick for sure.
He's one of my favorite players in the class,
Yeah,
so
he's very
I
fun.
love
He's very
him
fun.
going to a team that I enjoy.
Yeah, so there's that.
And then the Bijan at 19, that's where like when I was looking back through it before we started, I was like, I should have Bijan higher because I do value him high. Now, and I was looking, I was like, Buccaneers is the first place I feel like comfortable, like it makes
Right,
sense. So
he
it
could-
does make a lot of sense, I think there.
So and that's where like if the Dolphins were in this and we had a pick, I'd be like,
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that would be
But-
the pick for sure.
it would be the pick. But then again, no, you need offensive line help.
This is true.
Don't do
But
the shiny toy thing.
he would take a
because
little
the
bit of
shiny
pressure
toy
off,
thing doesn't-
though. I think a little bit though too. If teams have to think about
We
what
have
happens if we bring the
have
house,
the fastest offense in football, and there's still pressure issues.
I'm just saying. I mean, you have to think about him.
I
A
know,
little bit
I
more.
know.
It does take a little bit more of the defense's attention away, even than it already does. But I get what you're saying with that, though. But yeah, that's definitely a lot of fun. So I'm gonna have some differences for sure with you guys, which is good for sure. Starting with 11 with the Titans, Tyree Wilson goes off the board here. I think they just let Bud Dupree get cut, of course. I'm hoping he ends back with Steelers' depth, but that's beside the point. I think they need that big bodied edge guy to play with Harold Landry when he gets back from his ACL tear. You have two very different players, but really complementary skill sets, so that'll be good. Pick 12, I have Jackson Smith and Jigba going to the Texans and reuniting with CJ Stroud. This is my kind of combo pick here. I think the Texans go heavy offense. The defense obviously is going to need a lot of reinforcements, but I think D'Amico Ryans will be able to make that work in year one and kind of focus on it in year two. You got to make sure your rookie quarterback, who's going to be playing right away, has all the opportunity he has to be able to start off strong, and you can feel confident about him going forward. So I have that. Pick 13, I have Roger Jones. Again, I think that the Jets need tackle. He's the best tackle left, obviously, at this point. That's why the Patriots traded up ahead of them, because they wanted to make sure they got their tackle. So they get him there. Pick 14, Nolan Smith to the Eagles. If there's any team in the NFL that can take Nolan Smith's just raw ability and turn it into a 10-sack guy, it's the Eagles, right? That's who you send him to. They have all the guys in the world at edge, but they're going to need to replace him eventually. They're going to need more guys in rotation. Him and Hassan Reddick trying to rush the passer at the same time, with two like unbelievable athletes coming off the edge. That'll be fun in certain packages for sure. Pick 15, I do have a tight end, but I have a different one than Michael Mayer. My personal tight end one, Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Mercedes Lewis clone, but even more athletic in my opinion. Has a lot of receiving upside, but even early on, he's going to basically be a second or third tackle on the field half the time for them, helping their run game. That's going to help Jordan Love get acclimated, which I think is going to be the quarterback, obviously, assuming that the Jets do get that trade pulled off for Aaron Rodgers. So that's super helpful. Pick 16, I do have the same as you, Zach. I have JPJ, Joey Porter Jr., going to Washington. Just makes a ton of sense. They need help at corner. They're not very young at that position or very good. Kendall Fuller is their best player, and he's, I believe, maybe 30 now or close to it, if I'm not mistaken.
He's getting there because he was at Tech when I was at Tech. So
he's getting up there, and he's a good player, but they need some reinforcements there. Pick 17, because Joey Porter Jr. is off the board. Again, I have similar grades on these players, so I'm not too upset. I have Deonte Banks going to the Steelers at pick 17. That's my pick in this mock. Wanted to tackle. I still want to tackle here, but I'm not seeing that happen, especially if I'm doing what I would do, so I get that. Pick 18. This is kind of going to be one where I think you guys might not even have this player in the first round. If you don't, I totally get it, because it's a bit of a fit situation. You got to make sure you have a plan for him. I have Lions at 18 going Kalijah Kancey out of Pittsburgh.
Nice.
Uber athletic interior defensive lineman. They need some more pass rush. They don't get it off the edge in this class for me, but they do instead get somebody who can play in the interior, who they already have a lot of beef up front right now. They have a lot of bigger guys. You get an athletic pass rusher in there, put him in on third downs, let him just go hunt quarterbacks. Pick 19, I have Lucas Van Ness. So he's going to be a guy for Tampa Bay. I think that they need some help on the edge long term. Shaq Barrett's getting up there in age. You don't really 100% know what you have in Joe Shorenka. He's a younger player that they still have to develop. You add some more reinforcements to that defense, should help the offense kind of have a little bit less pressure on it. Although the Bijan pick was one I did think about too, Zach, so I'm right there with you guys too. And then pick 20, my personal wide receiver one outside of Jackson Smith-Njigba, just because I think that he's a unique type of player, but not necessarily number one outside receiver. Zay Flowers to Seattle. That's my top. That's you add him to that receiving core. I don't know how you stay with any of them. Because Lockett already, he's one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's going to be good for a couple more years, especially because he's doing that thing where he doesn't get hit. He just kind of falls down when he catches the ball. He'll play till he's 35, probably. Who knows? DK Metcalf, you obviously can't run with him or tackle him or do anything to him. And then Zay is just going to wreak havoc over the middle of the field and down the field whenever those two are being covered up. So love that fit. Gives Geno Smith a really nice chance to kind of make good on his first year with them, the starting, and then make that contract be a value, honestly. That's my 11 through 20 right now. And I can run through it again real quick if you guys want.
Yeah. Do you mind?
Yeah. So number 11, Tyree Wilson, edge to Titans. Jackson Smith-Njigba goes to the Texans at 12. Broderick Jones at 13 to the Jets. Eagles take Nolan Smith again at 14. Green Bay Packers go Darnell Washington, tight end of Georgia. Washington takes Joey Porter Jr. at 16. 17 is Deonte Banks out of Maryland. Kalijah Kancey goes to the Lions at 18. Pick 19 is Lucas Van Ness. And then pick 20 is going to be Seattle, Zay Flowers.
I think the one thing that jumps out to me is that I don't have Zay Flowers in my first round.
Okay. So again, this receiver class, there's a jumble of guys, like Tony said. I kind of have my own personal rankings on them, obviously, so I'm going with my top primary slot receiver. But you look at it however you want to with them. The receiver class, there could honestly be two of them taken the first round. I think there could be 4 or 5. It really just depends on what teams really actually value in this class at this point. I have gone
3.
all over the place with it. Okay, I think that's a good middle ground too, though. But yeah, Zay at 20 is my first white outside sort of receiver pick.
The other thing that popped out to me, and we'll find out in our next little go through, we all have different tight end ones.
Oh, fun. Okay, I have a feeling I think I know who yours will be then, but I will say I'm not going to try to spoil it or anything, but. Yeah, that's any other questions with mine? Anything you guys want to talk about?
So there were 2 that I found really interesting, both edge players. So Tennessee Titans taking Tyree Wilson, I think that makes so much sense. And it's something I haven't seen just because majority of people do have him going in the top 10.
Yeah, at least 6 or 7 pick, yeah.
I think that's something we need to keep in mind is if he doesn't go in the top 10, 11's probably his floor because that makes too much sense. I always see tackles and wide receivers to Tennessee. Bringing in the big edge makes way too much sense for that not to be a commonly thought of thing. So I like that. And then 14, the Eagles taking Nolan Smith. I love it. I think what you said. So what team can get the most out of this athletic raw guy? I have a different player, similar ideology to the
Yeah.
Eagles later in my draft.
Okay.
So I'm just
Right.
glad to see that we're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah.
I interestingly took the same approach with Nolan Smith, but did not put him with the Eagles.
I'm interested to see where he ends up then. But yeah, I think with Smith, especially before we jump into the last section of picks here, he's a guy that is going to be able to stop the run, weirdly enough, at his size early on for you. He can come in and help you with that situation, which was an issue for them last year.
Yeah.
And the pass rush tools are there, obviously. He just didn't really do a lot of pass rushing at Georgia for a lot of different reasons. That team is a little bit weird with their pass rush, though. But I think in the same vein of like a Trayvon Walker, where you bet on the athletic tools, Eagles do the same thing, but they do it with a player they can get later on. They were able to trade back and still get him. Made a lot of sense for me. I think it's the best spot for him personally to go to as well. So
It's so wild to look at this draft and the last draft and be like, man, Georgia really is the new Alabama.
they're putting out guys, and they're going to keep doing it too. It's going to be really interesting. But yeah, I did interesting. I'll just make this note before we move on. I had 3 straight Georgia players going 13, 14, 15. So that's fine.
Wow.
That'd be
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, Broderick Jones,
Yeah.
Nolan Smith, Darnell Washington, all in a row. So that's fun. They're good, man. They're good. But let's move back to Tony here. Let's go with 1 through 31. Finish it out for you.
All right. So at 21, the Miami Dolphins don't have a pick. I'm sorry,
Right.
Zach, that didn't need to be said, but I wanted to say it.
So technically,
I already said it.
It is 21 still with the Chargers, just because they get skipped out. But it's the Chargers here at 21. Yeah.
Yes. So now 21 or 22, depending on your perspective. The Los Angeles Chargers have a pick, and it is Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College.
There you go.
So didn't have to wait long to hear that name, Shane.
Yeah, makes
My
sense.
thought process here is I think there is a player that makes another offensive player that makes more sense given some current things going on in LA with their running back situation.
Right.
However, and I have nothing against picking Bijan to the Chargers. I think that makes a lot of sense. However, one of my biggest complaints with the Chargers offense is that they treat their offense as though they have Mac Jones at quarterback. They have
so
Justin Herbert.
bad. It's so bad.
I am picking this to force a schematic change, a strategic change. I no longer want Justin Herbert quickly moving through his progressions and dumping off to the running back outlet, no matter how good he is. I want Justin Herbert understanding that he is a freak, he is a very rare talent, and that he should be using his arm as such. So give me Zay Flowers, give me speed out on the field. You have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams, now you have speed. Stretch the field, use Justin Herbert to the fullest of his abilities. So that's I'm really excited about that one. I feel very strongly about it. 23, Baltimore Ravens. Another wide receiver comes off the board. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver out of TCU.
Fun.
He's big. He's a traditional X. He can win and contested. He can get the yak too. I think he makes a lot of sense for their offense. And ultimately, we don't know what's going to happen with Lamar. But the more you show an investment in the offense, the more likely it is he'll come down from his demands, and you'll find a good contract that treats him well and keeps him in Baltimore. So this just helps that discussion, I think. The Vegas Raiders at 24, because they did trade down from the 7 with the Vikings. I have them taking Anton Harrison, tackle out of Oklahoma. I think he's not getting talked enough about. He's not in that top tier of tackles, but I think he's right up against it. He's a really, really solid player, and he can play either side for you. So I think you're not getting Paris Johnson Jr. in Vegas, but you are getting an extra first round pick, an extra third round pick, and a starting tackle. And I think that is a really good strategy for them.
Yeah.
25, I have the Jaguars going with Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah.
Fun.
Doug Peterson loves his 2 tight end sets. They won a Super Bowl because they had Zach Ertz and Trey Burton, right? Like it makes a lot of sense to have.
Actually would have been probably the tight end too there at the time, but Burton played. He was the one who threw the pass to the.
Yeah, he threw
Foles.
the Philly.
Yeah.
So Ingram had a great year. He's back on the franchise tag. He's back for 1 year. So you have 2 guys together for a year, and then you have the future if Ingram ends up pricing himself
similar
out.
Players too,
So,
yeah. So
yeah, so I think it's just really fun. He's definitely the best receiving tight end, right? He's like that Travis Kelce style of zone
pure
beater.
receiver.
Like he just understands spacing and leverage and everything. He's so good. 26, New York Giants. I have John Michael Schmitz Schmitz, center out of Minnesota. I love centers more than the NFL, I think, does. We've seen them creep into the first round more and more. I think he's the best one. He's the best interior player for my money, and ultimately their interior O-line sucks right now. They need help in any of the three positions. He can play any of the three positions, and they run it so much that it matters. It really matters. It's worth the pick. 27, Dallas Cowboys, Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. This is like everybody's favorite pick, and ultimately I think Bijan will go higher. I think that once you are at a level of team where, like, I don't know, you're in the back half here, if there is a prospect who is really good, like he's a top 5 player in this class, it's worth it. The math changes when they're that good of a player, and you're picking this late where the contract isn't like, if you pick him in the top 10, his contract is top 5 already. But picking him here, it makes all the sense in the world. Replace Zeke. One Cowboys legend leaves, the next one comes in at running back. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Buffalo Bills at 28 here. I'm so happy the board fell this way. I promise I didn't do it on purpose. But we get Darnell Wright to play right tackle out of Tennessee. I think linebacker is super realistic. Ultimately, I think that's where it's going to land just because of the hole we've left ourselves without replacing Tremaine Edmonds in the middle. So it'll probably be like Jack Campbell, a trade down in Jack Campbell maybe, but I'm making the picks here. Spencer Brown isn't good enough. Josh Allen needs protection. He needs why not just continuously invest in Josh Allen? So get him a great pass protecting right tackle, which then leads to the most screwed over team in the draft, the Cincinnati Bengals. The board fell terribly for them. I spent the most time on this pick because I'm practicing as though I am the team. I want to do the right thing, and this board fell terribly. Darnell Wright getting picked the pick before them, that hurts. I could not find a good fit here. Considered DeJuan Jones, but ultimately he's built like Orlando Brown Jr. They have the same failure points, the same weaknesses, and you don't they like to spread things out too. Like Joe Burrow likes his 5-man protections, so you're running a risk if DeJuan Jones and Orlando Brown are your 2 tackles. So I avoided that, and I went in a different direction. I took Kalijah Cansey, interior D-line out of Pittsburgh. Wow. It's not like a pressing need, but they have had talent leave their defense, and I think they need to do something different because you're not going to be able to completely replace what you were doing. Big Lou can get the most out of any player on his roster, so I'm very excited to see how he would use a tiny little juiced up wrecking ball like Kalijah Cansey. So
Geno Atkins light, maybe that type of player, older than what they've been around, but still the same type of guy. So
yeah, I felt bad about how the board felt for them, but I think this is a very exciting potential fit in their defense. New Orleans Saints at 30. This is where Myles Murphy comes off the board for me. Edge out of Clemson. I think he is just 100% the mold of a New Orleans edge player. He's just all slow burn power, baby. There's no speed to this game. He is just going to bull rush your face with power, and he's going to do it well. And so I think it makes sense for their D line, which has lost a lot of players over the offseason. I assume I'll just finish out these last 2 picks here, right?
Yeah. So last 2 picks, yeah.
We've got Philadelphia Eagles on the clock at 31, and like I said, I wanted a freak athlete on the edge that didn't get utilized properly in college, and I want to see what he can do in this exciting edge group. So, Will McDonald IV, make your way to Philadelphia, edge out of Iowa State. Just continuing to stock the cupboards there. He's explosive and his potential is high with his athleticism. He was used in a weird 3-3-5 defense, holding the edge. That's not who he is.
He played a lot of. It was weird. His alignment was strange.
He's like a wide 9, ideally, speed rusher. So I think the Eagles will be able to use him in fun ways. And then finally at 32, the Kansas City Chiefs. I was afraid of DeJuan Jones for the Bengals because of the redundancy of the skill set with him and Brown. I think it makes more sense in Kansas City where they've invested in a guy they believe is a great pass protecting left tackle on the left side, so you can get a little bit riskier on the right side. He's going to get beat quickly sometimes, but he's also going to be a mauler in the run game. So I've got DeJuan Jones going there. I think he's better than Lucas Niang, who they currently have slotted in to start at right tackle, and I just think it makes a lot of sense for them. So Going back through that, Miami Dolphins don't have a pick at 21. 22, the Chargers take Zay Flowers. 23, the Ravens take Quentin Johnston. 24, the Raiders take Anton Harrison. 25, the Jags take Dalton Kincaid. 26, the Giants take John Michael Schmitz. 27, Cowboys, Bijan Robinson. 28, Bills, Darnell Wright. 29, Bengals, Kalijah Cansey. 30, Saints, Miles Murphy. 31, Eagles, Will McDonald. And 32, Chiefs, DeJuan Jones.
Nice. I think right away the Kalijah Cansey pick is definitely interesting. You said I get why you kind of felt like you were in a situation where the Bengals kind of got screwed over. I will say, what do you think about them going Darnell Washington without any tight end on the roster right now that can start?
So I will say I'm very comfortable with the idea of Cincinnati taking a tight end in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
I differ from you greatly on where I evaluate Darnell Washington.
Okay, I was just curious, because that would be the tight end left on the board that I think would make sense for them, but especially because of his ability as a blocker too early on.
Yeah,
as well,
so my worry with him is, like, we are saying that he's this 6th offensive lineman. He's not a finished product in the blocking game. He's very large, and when he gets his hands on you right and really engages, then you're screwed. But there's a lot of reps of him just getting beat. And then add in that he's not like the most fluid. He's not like a natural pass catcher, right? He's just like
he has room to grow.
He leaks out into the seam, and he runs fast, and he's big, and he's hard to tackle. So I have very strong concerns about him going in round 1 and not living up to what that projection would be. So if Mayer or Kincaid was on the board here, like, yeah, I'm all about it. I just don't see it with Washington.
I get that. Okay, I was just curious about that because that's a big need for them right now. And then
agreed.
Anything else that stood out to me? Like Flowers obviously makes a lot of sense. Harrison going that high definitely is interesting. I think that a lot of people are not valuing him very much because I think they view him as kind of like a pure only pass protector, which you'd think would bump him up. But really, it's I think because of the fact that they're not 100% sure he's going to be an all-around player, taking him in the first round might be a bit of a reach for some teams. But I like that for the Raiders because they need another pass protector along that line, so that makes a lot of sense. Kincaid to the Jaguars is really fun year 1, and then I do think that would probably just mean that they can let Ingram go because they're very similar styles of players to me, like very pure receiver type guys. So that's very interesting too for me as well. You're gonna like my picks in the middle of this section too, then Tony, because we're gonna have some similarities as well. So that'll be fun.
We all have some similarities.
Think so?
A few.
All right. Well, what do you got for us, Zach?
So my mock draft doesn't get to feature that the Dolphins don't have a pick, so it just goes to 21 with the Chargers.
Yeah, mine will be 21 too. Yeah.
Sorry with the numbers thing.
You're good. So Chargers selected. I have them selecting Cam Smith out of South Carolina, cornerback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uncertainty with Jason Jackson.
Help. Yeah. They need some secondary help. Get another person in there. I actually went back to back cornerbacks. I almost went 4 in a row, but there was a break. The Ravens need some help in their secondary, and I have them taking Kelly Ringo from Georgia.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah. They just need to fill it out. The offense is what it is at this moment. And did they have a different pick? No, they didn't have a different pick. I think when I did my first go round, I had them drafting Quentin Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, I don't know how I feel about that because I wanted Quentin Johnston to go to Minnesota.
23. So that's the pick there.
Yeah. So I took so Keely Ringo to Georgia, and then 23 with Minnesota, I sent Quentin Johnston. I have him as my top wide receiver too.
Okay.
So that's I thought it was interesting how you guys had everybody go, like you guys talking about Zay Flowers and all that, and I was like, that's my top number 2 guy.
Okay.
Because he was just a monster at TCU. He was destroying everyone. So I think that would be a really great for them to just plug in after Adam Thielen left and still have 2 very, very, very good options. The Jaguars, I went Deonte Banks from Maryland.
Okay.
So you guys had him a little drafted a little higher than I did, but he dropped just a little bit. But so that would have been 4 cornerbacks in a row had Johnson not been there.
There could be a run. So
there could be a run. So then this is where things get really interesting because I had a very tough time with 25 to 31 because it's kind of like we said, it gets to the point where you're like, do I focus on need? Do I focus on value? And I kind of did both. I feel like for a lot of these picks, except for one, there's only one real reach. And I just know I have a feeling it could happen. So for 25 with the Giants, I took Dalton Kincaid.
Okay, so get another pass catcher in there.
Get a pass catcher in there, and then he's still very raw. He's still very still getting into it. I mean, he's only been in with football, I think, for like 5 years.
Yeah, he's he's a newer player. Yeah, overall.
So I mean, they could also help continue to work on him as a tight end as well, and get some protection and some outside protection to help with Daniel Jones, to help with the running game and all of that. So I just think that made a lot of sense because he is like supposed to be the Travis Kelce of this draft. So you get yourself a pass catcher, but then also you can develop him into something more later on.
Okay.
So 26 is my reach. And you had Bijan available. I think that the Cowboys go wide receiver here, and it's not for Zay Flowers.
Okay.
It's for Jalen Hyatt.
Okay.
Because I think they want to get that home run hitter of somebody that they're like, all right, hey, Dak, we got this guy. We're going to tell him to run down the field every time 40 yards. We're going to give him the Randy Moss treatment. Just throw it up to him if he's open and have that home run ability available for them. Because I think CeeDee Lamb is a fantastic wide receiver one, but I think if they get Hyatt in there to do that, that can open him up to be more him, like to be more.
He's really more of a run after the catch, middle of the field player.
Yeah, open him up and make the game plan after him, and not have to worry about anybody else running like go routes and stuff like that. If you get a go route specialist, then you can have him do that. But they did just get Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does this push Gallup into a trade position?
I forgot about Brandon Cooks. So yeah, that was an oversight.
Well, I mean, Cooks is a more well-rounded player than Hyatt is. Hyatt could fill that true just vertical speed role, and he probably won't have to play more than 50% of the snaps as a rookie realistically. So I don't think that's really that big of a deal, honestly.
So for Buffalo though, I also went tight end with protection in mind because Michael Mayer is still on the board.
Michael Mayer. That's right.
Michael Mayer is still on the board. So I had them select Michael Mayer. I wasn't necessarily feeling any of the other tackles from the consensus big boards that I was looking at when I was at the spot, and I was like, well, he's still available, and like this is pretty much BPA. So yeah, Michael Mayer. And I think it will work very well because you do have the protection aspect from him as opposed to he's like more of a true tight end as opposed to being the receiving tight end we've seen a lot recently. So then the Bengals at 28, I have them. Notre Dame is one of the two teams I have drafting back to back. I have them drafting Isaiah Foskey.
Oh, okay.
Edge out of Notre Dame. Get some more help on that line.
Big time athlete, good player.
Big time athlete, and we just talked about Big Lou Anarumo, who can get the most out of his guys. So I just think that worked really well. So here is my Nolan Smith pick
to the Saints.
Okay,
all right.
You've seen them develop players that you didn't think would develop on the line, and we're not saying that Nolan Smith is an unknown player because he's not. He's on Georgia's defense, which is monstrous. I just think you put that in with on the back end of Cameron Jordan's career, give him some more support. I think that would be fantastic, especially with all of the talent that has just left. Marcus Davenport, who was the exact pick that was questionable a few years ago, and he's actually he blossomed into a pretty good pass rusher.
Yeah, last year he had a rough year, but yeah,
last year was a rough year. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So then the Eagles at 30, I have them selecting Trenton Simpson, linebacker from Clemson.
Replacement for Edwards and White, right? And then plays next to Kobe Dean. That's fun. Okay.
Yes. And then 31, there was a lot of directions I felt like the Chiefs could go, and originally I was going to take Zay Flowers, but then I took Darnell Wright.
Okay. I get that too. Play right tackle for them.
Yeah, get some more protection for Mahomes. Like, because that's the thing. It's like, what do they need? Like, the defense is actually starting to look pretty good. They could have gone something there, but I was just like, protection is always needed on the offensive line. You can't go wrong if there's a good offensive tackle on the board. So I'll run that back really quick. 21 Chargers select Cam Smith out of South Carolina, cornerback. The Baltimore Ravens select Keely Ringo, cornerback from Georgia at 22. Minnesota selects wide receiver Quentin Johnson from TCU at 23. Jaguars take cornerback Deontay Banks out of Maryland at 24. The Giants draft Dalton Kincaid, tight end from Utah at 25. The Dallas Cowboys reach for Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver from Tennessee at 26. 27, the Buffalo Bills draft Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. 28, the Bengals select Isaiah Foskey, edge rusher out of Notre Dame. 29, the New Orleans Saints select Nolan Smith, a rusher out of Georgia. And then 31, Philadelphia Eagles select Trenton Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson at 30. And then Kansas City Chiefs, with the final pick of the first round, select Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee.
I'll let Tony go first because I think he wants to probably talk about one of the picks in this range here. But
so I've actually got a grouping of 3 back-to-back picks that I think are definitely the most like discussion worthy here.
Yeah. Okay.
So just going down the list, Giants Dalton Kincaid is very interesting to me because they just traded for what's his face. Somebody help me here. Tight end from Vegas.
Darren Waller. Crap! They just got Darren Waller too. Man, I'm getting scooped hard.
Well, so this is interesting, right? Because the points you made on Kincaid and the points you made on a pick that I'm about to talk about, I think they can be flip flopped and almost make like more sense. So Michael Mayer, the blocking aspect. First of all, I think Daniel Bellinger showed enough as a rookie where like he should be think you have that role. And you should roll with that as your tight end duo. But if they do bring in a tight end, Michael Mayer, I think adding the blocking skill set while Waller is more of the vertical receiver skill set. Right. I think that makes sense. The Cowboys, I mean, we touched on it. So last week after the trade, I was like, well, I'm not mocking Jalen Hyatt to the Cowboys.
That's
every
right.
time
Oh
like
my gosh, that's right.
But I still don't think it's a terrible thing if they do it. They clearly want to add speed, and I do think Gallup is a tradable contract, and they might just see that as like hey, what if we get a third for Gallup and we roll in with 2 speedsters and CeeDee Lamb? Like they can reshape their offense, right? And then the Bills with Mayer. So the Bills, I don't know. So here's the thing. Josh Allen doesn't like throwing to tight ends. He doesn't. We have Dawson Knox, and he's open so often, and Josh Allen just doesn't throw it to him. So my worry, and I think the team wants to invest in tight end. Like I do think that they want to go more heavy 21 personnel. However, a little bit, I just are we really going to spend a first round pick when we have a guy who gets open consistently that our quarterback refuses to target? Like, does adding another one of those players influence him to target?
Be like, oh man, I guess there's these guys, these like 6'4", 6'5" guys that run around. Maybe I should throw it to them. No,
I don't know. It's interesting. I do think Mayer or Kincaid would be really fun schematic fits. I think Mayer is much closer to the Dawson Knox mold of he's the traditional tight end. He blocks and he's a pass catcher. Mm-hmm. Kincaid, I would be very excited about that skill set being added to the Bills. I just want to play slot receiver. Yeah, I have questions about how we'd use him, but if we use him as like the Cole Beasley replacement, like this is your new underneath target, I'd be very interested. So those are the 3 I wanted to talk about because they were back to back, very interesting to me.
The one that I go right to is Keely Ringo 22, and the reason I do this is because you have Banks going 2 picks later. So for me, again, this is a personal preference, and this is what you would do mock draft. I have Banks basically a full round higher than Ringo. And the reason I have that is because Ringo is a pure athlete at this point. I legitimately don't think he could play corner year 1 in the NFL. I think he will get absolutely dominated. And that's not saying that he won't become good. But you look at what he showed at Georgia, and he is an athlete. And he was able to get away with a lot of stuff because he's an athlete. But he does not have very good zone instincts. His man coverage is not as good as you think it would be considering his athleticism. I think it's a good spot for him to learn how to become a good corner, but I don't think you get much from him as a rookie, unless you think he can play some special teams or something like that. But I don't think he brings a lot of day one value, right? So that's more of a future forward pick, which is fine because the Ravens do that type of stuff. A lot of teams will do that. But Banks at 24, that makes a lot of sense. That like you let Shaquille Griffin go. Like that makes a lot of sense for the Jaguars to take him because again, I think he'd fit seamlessly into that number 2 corner spot opposite Tyson Campbell. So like it makes a lot of sense for that. The Mayer pick, again, it's not so much that I don't like the idea of it. Kind of like what Tony said, they're not going to throw to him. Like they're just going to be like, listen, like Josh gonna be like, listen, man, that's cool. You go block somebody. I'll run around and throw to Stephon Diggs 50 yards downfield. Like that's what I'm going to do. And
that was more so why I put Mayer there because I was like, oh well, they do need protection. Like,
yeah, but that's definitely a fun one. But let me make sure I have all mine pulled up here. Okay, so yeah, I do have like 21 through 31 is my numbers too, but that's fine. So 21 to I'm gonna start with the Chargers here. Obviously, they take Quentin Johnston here. I think that this is the interesting thing about him is despite his size profile, he's not a good contested catch. He did not do well in contested catch situations in college. I think under 50% in contested catch situations. But for me, I value him as a catch the ball 20 yards down the field and run away from everybody. Throw him on deep digs, let him run away up the sideline from guys. His speed is electric. I think if you get him down the field in non-contested catch situations, like if you hit him in stride down the field, I think he's going to be very valuable there too. You have Mike Williams still out there to be the contested catch guy. You hope you can get a couple more years out of Keenan Allen and maybe get some stuff out of I forget their Josh Palmer as well. Hope they get some.
And they also have Guyton.
Yeah, which he's not really doing anything anymore. Actually, I don't even know if he's on the roster anymore. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if he's still on the team for them or not. But yeah, you have every other skill set receiver except the speed element, right? So you get a guy that can run down the field and run away from people as well and run after catch situations. So 22, I have the Ravens taking Cam Smith. This is where I think he goes. I think that they, as much as the corners kind of dried up at this point for me, he's kind of the last like true round one guy that I have left on my board at this point. So they really need help at corner, especially he can come in day one and help them there. Pick 23, the Vikings. This one's a little bit of a reach in terms of like where I value this position, but I think it'd be really good for this defense to have this, especially with the corners gone at this point, that I would be willing to take this high. Jack Campbell out of Iowa, linebacker. They just let go Eric Kendricks. They let him go after years of being the kind of the stalwart in the middle of their defense. They need another zone coverage, smart linebacker that can handle everything in the middle for that team. Don't have that right now with him gone. That would kind of settle things down defensively in the middle of the field, and then they'd have to still figure out the edges, but you figure that out at corner later on. Pick 24, I have Brian Branch finally comes off the board to the Jaguars. He could just kind of play wherever they need him to play. I think he'd be a good safety for them. He could be a good slot player for them, wherever he needs to be. Just the value is kind of too good, and they need help at defensive back. That's kind of where I'm thinking with him. Pick 25, same as you, Tony, John Michael Schmitz, center to the Giants. I love the fit. I love the player. I'd love to have him as a Steeler, but we kind of addressed offensive line interior to the point where it's probably not necessary. So he's not going to make it to 32 anyway, I don't think. I think he's really going to be valued by a couple different teams. Pick 26, Bijan Robinson as well. This just screams Cowboys, and I like the fit too. Pollard's on a one-year deal with a franchise tag. You hope he can come back healthy, and maybe you can have them both as a duo, kind of like what you had with him and Zeke the past couple years. Or worst-case scenario, Pollard moves on. You have a 3-down running back for another 4 or 5 years, hopefully, and then you just kind of reset and see what you can do there. Pick 27. I get the Darnell Wright pick, which is what I think you did, Tony, right?
Yeah.
I do like him a lot. I have them taking Dawan Jones, the Bills here, mostly because I like the floor of just the big tackle that can just kind of stonewall people, move in the run game, will help them in that way. Like imagine Josh Allen running quarterback power behind him because they're going to run it anyway. Like that's tough to deal with. And I think his floor as a pass protector is actually relatively high just because it's so hard to get around a guy like that. Even the guys who are quicker, it felt like he just was able to, as long as he can get a little bit of contact with them, it's just hard for them to get through him. So I like that pick for them. Pick 28. This is where Michael Mayer goes. I think the Bengals really need a tight end help. They can get a guy who is a complete tight end, can help them in the pass game a little bit, be that underneath target, and even up the seam a little bit. He's a little bit more juice to him than I think his 40 and other things would suggest. And again, they just don't have anybody at that position right now. There's just not anything there. Pick 29, I go Brian Brzee. I think that the defensive interior for the Saints was absolutely devastating for agency. They lost a lot of guys. He's a guy who has a lot of upside. The tape is kind of iffy on him, but again, he dealt with a lot of things. His sister passing away, that whole situation, like a lot of mental strain there. I think he's a very talented player and probably should go higher than this realistically, but looking at the tape and everything else combined allows him to fall to a 29. Pick 30, Osiris Torrance, guard out of Florida. They do have one guard other than Skronsky, if you want to view him as a guard here in the first round. They lose Ciamillo, who goes to the Steelers, which love that for us. but they do need some interior help because of that. You don't want to have to force Jurgens to play guard or some of the other backs they have right now. Get a true like just road grader. The run game allow him to kind of come in and replace Sumilo there. And lastly, pick 31. This one could go so many different directions, right? Because the Chiefs technically have needs, but like they don't really seem to care because it just works out anyway. I have Myles Murphy finally coming off the board. I think he's a really good edge player that could use some time to kind of get acclimated and get figured out like he was in 2021. Get back to that player. They would be able to allow him to do that there. And if he works out, if he looks like that player, you got a guy who could have maybe been a top 15 pick if he was fully healthy last year on your defensive line at pick 31. So. And I can run through those again before you guys ask anything if you want.
Yes.
Okay, so 21, we got Quentin Johnson to the Chargers. 22, Cam Smith to the Ravens. 23, Jack Campbell to the Vikings. 24, Brian Branch to the Jaguars. 25, John Michael Schmitz again goes to the Giants. Cowboys, Bijan Robinson. Bills, Dawan Jones. Michael Mayer goes to the Bengals at 28. Brian Brzee goes to the Saints at 29. Osiris Torrance goes to the Eagles at 30. And finally, Myles Murphy goes to the Chiefs at 31.
We'll jump right back into the Bills situation. Mm-hmm. So you went Dawan Jones over Darnell Wright.
And if you take again, I like them both, so I think it doesn't really matter too much to me. But
the reason I was so excited that Darnell Wright was on the board, and the reason that I don't like Dawan Jones for the Bengals is I don't think Dawan Jones has a very high floor as a pass protector. So you said like it's hard to get around that size. We have size at tackle right now. We've got Spencer Brown, the most athletic tackle in the NFL, literally like number one out of whatever in RAS score. And his deficiency is that he is so big that it is prohibitive to his play style. Like guys get around him too easily. And like, yeah, if he gets his hands on you, he can control you, but guys get around him too easily. And he's great in the run game. He's out there road grading. He's bullying guys out of the way so Josh Allen can run power behind him. But he sucks in pass protection, and it is bad. And I don't want to replace him with virtually the same player with just a little bit higher of a floor. Like I don't like. I get it. Spencer Brown was a 3rd-round pick. Dawan Jones rightly is going to be a 1st-round pick. I will say Spencer Brown. He grew up playing 7-on-7 football as a tight end. He's 3 years into playing offensive tackle, and he had a back issue last year. So like, if I'm gonna roll the dice on the super large right tackle that's better at run blocking than pass blocking, I'm just gonna stick with Spencer Brown and invest elsewhere. So the pivot to Darnell Wright was all about. This guy might not be very good at run blocking, but he is an elite pass protector, and I can set my clock to that. I know it to be fact. So that's where like I'm worried about that fit. Is just Dawan Jones feels like a lateral move from Spencer Brown and more of what I don't like about it currently.
Yeah, I think that's just a difference in because I think his pass protection is actually very good as far as what I've seen from him on film. Like I don't think he has any deficiencies in terms of dealing with quickness, especially compared to like a Spencer Brown, right? I don't think he's as good as a pass protector overall as Darnell Wright. Obviously, Wright had an unbelievable season against guys like Will Anderson Jr. and things like that. But I viewed it more as like I like that type of tackle for the Bills because I want to get them more in that direction of like you need to start relying a little bit more on your run game, not even just because will protect Josh Allen, but because at some point you're going to have to be willing to do that, and they haven't shown that willingness. And I feel like moving them in more of that run blocking range while upgrading over what Spencer Brown does for you will hopefully get them in that direction. But again, Darnell Wright at 27, won't complain here because guess what? If I was doing the first pick of the 2nd round, the Steelers, guess who's going? Darnell Wright's going at 32. So you're not going to complain. You're going to get any complaints from me for picking him over him. But
yeah,
that'll make sense. Talk about.
And there's just one other guy that I wanted to mention because you both had him in your 1st round. I think that is going to ultimately be the end result. I did not, and that's Brian Brzee out of Clemson. I just I don't see it. I understand the reasons we don't see it. There were a lot of things going on outside of football that really affected this man's life, and I'm not penalizing him for it. I'm just saying, like, if I'm making a 1st-round investment, I want to have seen it. And so I think he's right up there at the top of the 2nd round, but I did not find a spot. The Saints would have been the spot, but Myles Murphy being on the board was like, okay, well, this is just a cleaner projection. But I did want to, like, he's not in my 1st round. I think he ends up there. Athleticism checks out. Flashes check out. I didn't see it consistently enough to bank on it in the first round, but I think he's a guy that will go in the first round for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, and I look at this as kind of fortunate and unfortunate because like we could use help at this position, but it's a little obviously a little too early for me. I don't think it's impossible the Steelers take him 17. I think that's actually very possible from what I've heard. So that would definitely be a waiver reach for me. But yeah, I get that because again the flashes were there occasionally, but you just didn't see him put it together really. He is an upside player for the Saints, right? They need help at that position, and I think that on the board at that point, like you could have gone edge for sure, but I think that you take a swing on a guy that has upside at interior where it's hard to find guys that can play with the type of athleticism that he's been able to show. So I would, if you flip those two though, or if you took Brzee out of the first round a little bit, you're not going to get Airmans from me just because again he didn't show a lot of it in college, unfortunately. So, but anything you wanted to touch on, Zach, with mine?
No, I mean the Bijan. See, that's where I wish I hadn't taken Bijan to the what's her name's the Bucks because that makes a lot more sense. But
I like the Bucks though doing that just because it's way more fun to watch that team with Bijan.
And I think it's closer to where we're actually going to see it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know what I don't know what Dallas does then. Because like
I will say the mock I did earlier that I didn't end up going with, I had Adebayor going to the Cowboys
I like
26 to be kind of inside out presence for them for sure. That's who I had 26 for him. So, but yeah, that's our mocks for right now. This is again what we would do mock draft.
I do have a very important question before we log off, and something we should square away because we're going to be doing these.
Yes.
So I was previously in the camp of pick 21 belongs to the Los Angeles Chargers because the Dolphins forfeited theirs. And then I was enlightened with an argument I saw on Twitter that I can't get out of my head whenever I think about it now.
Okay.
And that is that if you are at the deli and the person before you takes ticket number 21 and you take ticket number 22 and that person then leaves the deli and their number gets called, your ticket doesn't turn into ticket 21. You are still using ticket 22 to get up to the counter. You're just doing it before that person. So that is why I now look at it as though pick 21 is something that is real. It's just not a pick that is made. And then pick 22 belongs to the Chargers. So I saw that on Twitter. Haven't been able to get it out of my head since.
So the only thing I'll say, what I think we should do, just for the sake of like what it's going to be, how is the NFL doing it? Do we know at this point? Are they just going to skip over 21 and move to 22 and like when the draft happens, or is it going to move to 21 with the Chargers? Because I'm not sure.
Let's what year did the Patriots have their first round pick forfeited?
What year was that? I can't remember. 2008, 9, somewhere in there. Was that which one was this for? Was that for the Spygate? I thought it was for
or not even the Spygate one. Was it Deflategate? Did they get a
no?
First
they
round
didn't
pick
lose.
taken
They didn't lose the first round for that.
Okay.
No.
Because I was going to try to like look up how they list it.
Let me see here. Forfeited.
Patriots forfeited their first round picks in 2008.
So that was for Spygate. Okay. What was the draft order like? Can you see it?
2008 NFL draft.
Yeah.
See, the issue is I need to see.
I think I can do it. Hold on.
The NFLs and not.
Yep. So this is. I'll just base it off of Pro Football Reference. They have a draft list. Okay. They have 31 picks, so it starts with one, and they just skip right into it. Like they don't take that pick away necessarily. It starts from 1 and goes to 31. That's it. And then it goes into round 2.
So technically so everything's going to be 1 down.
Yes. Yeah. So like the first pick of round 2 is 32 in this case. So that'd be the Steelers.
That was the Dwayne Brown draft.
Yeah. But so yeah, that's how I think we'll do it. We'll just have it like the Miami pick basically gets transferred to the Chargers and they move on. Like there's not a 32nd pick listed in the first round.
All right, I'll concede.
Okay.
I
feel like that's just
on the table.
That's just cleaner because I know that's how they're going to do it. Realistically, like that's how they're going to view it because it basically makes it not exist, which I think is just a little cleaner. So, But
This
yeah,
is so depressing. Just looking at this draft and seeing so many highly drafted Virginia Tech players, and
oh yeah, Zach,
now
I'm
I'm just
sorry.
like,
Man,
Hey, Tremaine
Sparty had a
Evans got a lot
streak
of
where we
money,
had like
so
4 straight years of first round picks. We haven't.
oh yeah,
We barely have a
yeah.
player getting drafted this year. Like, thank you,
That's
Jaden
rough.
Reed, for being
Jaden
there.
Reed's going to be the one, yeah, for sure. But that'll do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to do a more of a predictive mock of what we actually just based on what we think at this point and what we've been hearing, how we think the draft could go if we're trying to predict it. That'll be probably not quite as fun to do, but it'll be a little bit more enlightening, I think, of where we kind of view the class and what we think people are saying and what we've been hearing. So we'll jump into that next week. But for now, signing off. See you guys next week.